I was standing outside my sister's room when I heard her voice, sharp and annoyed, slice through the door. "I don't want to spend Christmas with that failure," she said. Then came my mom's soft reply. "Just until she gets back on her feet, Amira. Just until. If you've ever heard something that broke your heart, but you had to stay quiet, you'll understand why that moment changed me. Stay with me, because what happened after that night still feels unreal." I had only been home for 2 days. My life had completely fallen apart. My husband cheated, my business collapsed, and my savings vanished trying to fix what couldn't be saved. I came home with 2 suitcases, a tired smile, and a heart full of shame. I thought family would be my safe place. But hearing those words from Amira, my own sister, felt like someone had slammed a door inside my chest. Amira had always been the golden child. She had a good job, a fancy car, and a fiancé who adored her. She never missed a chance to remind me how some people just make better choices. I used to laugh it off, but that night, as I stood there in the hallway, listening to her mock me like I was some burden she couldn't wait to get rid of, something in me shifted. I stepped away from the door quietly. The Christmas lights on the staircase flickered softly, and I caught my reflection in one of the ornaments, tired eyes, messy hair, and a look of someone who'd hit rock bottom. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. I felt anger instead. Not the kind that screams or throws things, but the quiet kind that builds and burns until it pushes you to change. Mom didn't know I'd heard them. At dinner, she tried to keep things light, asking if I'd unpacked or wanted cocoa. Amira barely looked at me, too busy showing off photos of her engagement ring and vacation plans. I forced a smile, but inside I was crumbling. Every word she said felt like a reminder that I didn't belong there anymore. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing laughter from Amira's room. I thought about the years I had spent helping her, proofreading her college essays, lending her money, even covering for her when she messed up. And now, I was the failure she didn't want to spend Christmas with. But I made myself a quiet promise right then. I wasn't going to beg for space in a house that was supposed to be mine too. I wasn't going to stay broken just to make others comfortable. I whispered into the darkness. This time, I'm not staying silent. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to rise. And when I did, they were all going to see exactly who the real failure was. The taxi stopped in front of the small brick house I once called home. I sat there for a second, gripping the handles of my 2 suitcases, feeling like they carried more than clothes. They carried every piece of my broken pride. The cold December air hit my face as I stepped out. The house looked the same, yet smaller somehow, like my memories had outgrown it. Mom opened the door before I could even knock, her arms already wide. "My baby," she said, hugging me tight. For a moment, I felt safe. But over her shoulder, I saw Amira standing in the hallway, smiling in that way that wasn't really a smile. "Wow, you actually made it," Amira said. Her voice was sweet, but the words carried a sting. "We weren't sure if you'd want to come back here, after everything." I swallowed the lump in my throat and smiled back. "Yeah, life happens," I said, trying to sound calm. Dinner that night felt like walking through a minefield. Mom kept asking about my plans. "Are you going to start your business again? Maybe find something local?" I didn't have answers yet. I barely had energy to eat. Amira, on the other hand, talked nonstop about her promotion, her new house, and her fiancé Malcolm. She described every detail, from the marble countertops to the imported tiles. Malcolm wasn't there that night, but she made sure to remind us of how supportive and amazing he was. Then she turned to me, her eyes glinting. "You know, Zuri, sometimes things fall apart because we ignore the signs. But I guess everyone learns differently." Mom shot her a warning look, but I just smiled tightly. I'd learned that arguing with Amira only gave her what she wanted, a reaction. Still, every word she said hit deeper than I let on. I felt small sitting there, in the same dining room where we'd once laughed as kids, now listening to my sister treat me like a guest in my own life. After dinner, I offered to wash the dishes, but Amira stopped me. "No, it's fine," she said quickly. "I'll handle it. You must be tired from whatever you've been doing lately." The pause before her last words wasn't accidental. I caught Mom's sigh from the living room, but she stayed quiet too. When I finally went to my old room, I found most of my things gone. The posters, the books, even the quilt Grandma made me. The space looked sterile, like no one had ever lived there. Amira had turned it into a guest room. That hurt more than I expected. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank walls, hearing their laughter downstairs. My chest felt heavy, but beneath it, something else began to rise, determination. I wasn't going to let them see me as weak forever. I whispered to myself, just watch. I'll rebuild everything they think I lost. That night, as the wind howled softly outside my window, I couldn't stop the memories from flooding back. The pain of the past still felt fresh, like an old wound that never really healed. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back in my old office, the one with my name on the glass door, Zuri Daniels Designs. It used to be my pride, my dream come true. Until the day I walked in and saw everything crumble in front of me. I had returned early from a client meeting, carrying coffee for my team, smiling like nothing could go wrong. But when I opened the door to my partner's office, I froze. My husband, David, was there, and he wasn't alone. My business partner, Nina, was pressed against him, their whispers turning into something uglier than I could process. The cup slipped from my hand, splattering coffee across the floor, and both of them looked at me like I was the one interrupting something normal. "Zuri, it's not what it looks like," David stammered. But it was exactly what it looked like. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial too. Within weeks, they drained accounts, pulled clients, and left me with debts I never knew existed. My company collapsed, my marriage imploded, and my name, once respected, became a whispered joke in every business circle I'd fought to be part of. When I couldn't handle the pressure anymore, I called Amira, my sister, the one person I thought would understand. She came over that night, brought wine, listened while I cried, and said all the right words. "You'll rebuild, Zuri. You're stronger than this," she told me. I believed her. But months later, I found out what she really said behind my back. A friend from church called to warn me. "Amira told everyone you should have seen it coming," she said. "That maybe if you'd paid more attention, he wouldn't have cheated." My heart shattered all over again. It wasn't just David or Nina. It was Amira too. My own sister, turning my pain into gossip for sympathy and attention. I started seeing every moment of my life differently after that. The fake smiles, the small comments, the way she always had to be one step ahead of me. It wasn't just rivalry. It was something darker, something that had been growing for years while I pretended we were close. Lying in bed now, in that cold guest room, I realized this Christmas wasn't the beginning of her cruelty. It was just the latest chapter. She'd been chipping away at me quietly for years, and I had let her. But this time, I wouldn't let her win. I wasn't going to scream or expose her lies, not yet. My revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be success. It would be peace. It would be her having to watch me rise without her help. And as I drifted off to sleep, I whispered into the dark, "She'll see who I really am soon." The morning of the interview, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at myself for a long time. The reflection looking back wasn't the woman I used to be, but she wasn't broken anymore either. My black blazer was borrowed, the shoes slightly scuffed, but I straightened my shoulders anyway. This was my chance, maybe my only one, to start again. The firm was one of the top design companies in Charlotte, and just applying had felt like reaching too high. Still, I needed to try. The city skyline glimmered as the bus rolled in, and for a moment, I felt that familiar spark I used to have, the one that believed I was meant for more. I walked into the tall glass building, my heart pounding. But when I saw the name on the board of directors, Raymond Price, my stomach dropped. He was Amira's old mentor, the man who had attended her engagement dinner last year. I froze right there in the lobby. If Amira found out I was interviewing here, she could ruin everything before it even began. For a few minutes, I thought about leaving. It would have been easier to walk away, to avoid the possibility of another heartbreak. But then I remembered that night in the hallway, her voice calling me a failure. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "Not this time." When I walked into the interview room, the air smelled like new paper and coffee. A tall man with kind eyes looked up from his laptop. "Zuri Daniels?" he said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm Elias Carter, senior partner here. Have a seat." He didn't rush me, didn't scan my resume with judgment. He asked about my ideas, my old projects, how I approached design challenges. For the first time in a long while, someone actually listened. I showed him sketches I'd done during sleepless nights, things I'd drawn just to remind myself I still had talent. His eyes lit up as he flipped through them. "You have an incredible eye for warmth and detail," he said. "This kind of authenticity is rare." I couldn't stop smiling. No one had said something kind about my work since before my life fell apart. For an hour, I forgot the pain, the gossip, the failure. I was just me again, Zuri, the designer who dreamed in colors and lines. When the interview ended, Elias stood and said, "We'll be in touch soon. But I'll be honest, I already know I want you here." My heart almost burst. That evening, I got the call. I'd been offered the job. I sat on my bed in silence, the letter of employment glowing on my phone screen. I didn't tell Mom, and I definitely didn't tell Amira. Not yet. This was mine, my secret victory. For the first time in months, I felt something beautiful spark inside me. Hope. The house smelled like cinnamon and roasted turkey, the same way it did every Christmas Eve, but this year the warmth in the air felt fake. I stood by the kitchen counter, arranging silverware, while Amira's laughter echoed from the living room. She'd been talking nonstop since morning, her voice high and proud, telling everyone how Malcolm just got promoted to regional manager and how their wedding would be the event of the year. Every few seconds, she'd wave her hand just enough for the ring to catch the light. I smiled when she looked my way, but inside I was tired. Mom tried to keep things balanced, humming Christmas songs while stirring gravy, glancing between us whenever the silence stretched too long. "You girls remember when we used to bake cookies together?" she said, her voice soft. "Zuri always burned the first batch." I laughed. "Still do," I said, pretending not to notice the way Amira rolled her eyes. By evening, the table was set, the candles lit, and Christmas music played faintly in the background. I dressed simply in a red sweater and jeans, but Amira came downstairs looking like she was attending a gala. Glittering dress, perfect makeup, and heels that clacked like applause. "Malcolm will be here soon," she announced, as if the whole room had been waiting for her fiancé's arrival. Dinner started quietly enough. Mom complimented the mashed potatoes, I passed the bread, and Amira talked about Malcolm's new bonus, the house they'd buy, the honeymoon plans. Every word was polished, meant to shine brighter than mine. "You should come visit us sometime, Zuri," she said sweetly. "You'd love the city." "Oh wait, do you even go downtown anymore?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Mom got up to answer, and a familiar voice followed her back into the dining room, Mrs. Langley, our neighbor. She brought a small tin of cookies, smiling warmly at all of us. "I just wanted to drop these off and say Merry Christmas," she said, setting the tin on the table. Then she turned to me. "Zuri, I saw you downtown the other day, in that big new office building on Main Street. You looked so busy, I didn't want to interrupt." The room went silent. I saw it, the flash in Amira's eyes, the confusion that turned to something sharp. "Office building?" she asked, her voice tight. "What were you doing there?" I sipped my water and smiled. "Oh, just work stuff," I said casually. "You'll see soon enough." Mom's lips curved into the smallest smile. Amira's fork clattered against her plate, and for once, she didn't have another story ready. The silence between us wasn't awkward this time. It was powerful. I didn't need to brag or prove anything. As the candles flickered and snow began to fall outside, I realized something. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one shrinking at the table. I was the one holding the secret, and it felt good. When Elias called me into his office that morning, I thought I'd done something wrong. He looked serious, hands folded on the desk, eyes fixed on me. "Zuri," he said, "I have a special project, and I think you're the perfect person to lead it." I sat there frozen, trying to process his words. Me? Led a project? I'd only been at the firm for a few weeks. Then he slid a folder across the desk. "The Daniels family home renovation," he said. I stared at the name for a second before it hit me. My family. My mother's house. My sister's house. I looked up, confused. "Is this my Daniels family?" He smiled. "Yes. We received a proposal from your sister's firm months ago, but the board wasn't satisfied. They wanted a fresh vision. I've seen your work, Zuri. You can do this." I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Fate had a strange sense of humor. My sister's company had already pitched this project, and now I was being asked to take it over. Elias must have seen the hesitation in my face because he added gently, "You don't have to tell them until it's official. Just focus on the design. Let your work speak for itself." So I did. For the next 2 weeks, I poured everything I had into that project. Late nights turned into early mornings. I sketched until my fingers cramped, imagined every wall, every corner, every detail that represented not just a house, but the story of a family trying to find warmth again. I wanted to bring beauty to the place where I'd once felt broken. The presentation day came faster than I expected. The boardroom buzzed with quiet conversations as the firm's senior designers took their seats. Amira was there too, in her elegant suit, flipping through her notes, completely unaware that I was even on the project. Her confidence filled the room, the same smug aura she always carried when she thought she'd already won. Elias stepped forward. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to introduce someone. The designer leading this project, Zuri Daniels." The room went still. Amira's head snapped up, her mouth parting in disbelief. "What?" she whispered. I walked to the front of the room, my heart pounding but my steps steady. I clicked the remote, and my design appeared on the big screen. Warm colors, open light, and spaces built around healing and togetherness. The board members leaned forward, impressed. Elias smiled proudly. When the presentation ended, the room erupted in quiet applause. One of the executives turned to Amira. "This is exactly what we were hoping for. Zuri's concept captures everything your version lacked: emotion, connection, vision." Amira sat frozen, her knuckles white around her pen. I didn't gloat. The table was set perfectly. I just smiled
every
politely
Christmas
and said,
before.
Gold
Thank you for the
plates,
opportunity.
red napkins folded
Walking
into
out of that
roses,
boardroom,
candles
I felt
flickering
lighter.
against the walls.
I hadn't yelled.
I
I
hadn't
hadn't sought
time. The air
revenge.
felt heavier, thicker.
I'd simply let my work
You could almost
speak.
taste the tension.
And in that silence,
Mom sat
I'd
at the head
finally
of the
beaten
table,
her.
trying to smile through it, while Amira poured herself another glass of wine. Malcolm sat beside her, quiet and distant, scrolling through his phone between bites. I sat across from them, calm, collected, though my pulse thudded quietly beneath the surface. Mom tried to start small talk. "The food turned out wonderful this year," she said, her eyes darting between us. Zuri helped with the table setting. Amira laughed, too loudly. "Of course she did. Setting tables is what she's good at, right?" She swirled her wine, smirking, daring me to react. I smiled faintly. "I guess we all have our strengths." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, right. Like stealing my project at work." The words came out slurred but sharp. Malcolm's head lifted, surprised. I stayed quiet, letting her voice fill the room. "You think I don't know? The whole office is talking about it. My own sister swoops in and takes the spotlight like she's some genius designer. You think you're better than me now." The clatter of silverware stopped. Mom's hands froze around her napkin. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that burns. I looked at Amira, her face red from anger and wine. For the first time, I didn't feel small in front of her. I didn't feel like the broken sister coming home in shame. I leaned forward slightly and said, quietly but firmly, "No, Amira. I just stopped being the failure you needed me to be." She blinked, her smirk fading. The air seemed to shift. Mom exhaled slowly and finally spoke. "That's enough, Amira." Her voice was calm, but there was power in it. "You've been jealous of your sister since you were children. You always needed to be the star, even if it meant dimming her light. I saw it all. I just let her come home because I knew this time she wouldn't let you win again." Amira's fork dropped against her plate. "You knew," she said, her voice trembling. Mom nodded. "I did. And I'm proud of her for standing tall, even when you tried to knock her down." Malcolm pushed his chair back, his face tight with frustration. "You know, Amira, I've watched how you treat people, especially your sister. It's exhausting." He stood up, shaking his head. "I think I've had enough for one night." He grabbed his coat and walked out without another word. Amira sat frozen, staring at her plate. The candles flickered, their light dancing against her glassy eyes. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. For once, the silence spoke louder than any revenge ever could. The storm outside matched the one brewing inside. The candles had burned low, their wax dripping down like tears. After Malcolm left, silence stretched between us like a wound. Amira sat with her head down, pretending to scroll through her phone, but her hands trembled. Mom, Rosa, cleared her throat softly. "Amira," she began, her voice low but steady. "There's something you need to hear." Amira glanced up, eyes cold and defensive. "What now, Mom?" "Another lecture about how perfect Zuri is." Rosa shook her head. "No, this is about what I heard you say years ago." The tone made both of us look up. When Zuri's business failed and her marriage ended, I was devastated. But I couldn't understand how the news spread so fast. Who told everyone she cheated on her husband, who said she stole money from her own company. Rosa's gaze hardened. "Until I heard you on the phone one night." Amira froze, color draining from her face. "I was walking past your room," Rosa continued, "and I heard you laughing with your friends. You told them Zuri had been fired for fraud, that she'd been begging for her husband to stay. You humiliated her when she was already broken." The air went still. My throat tightened, but I didn't speak. I just watched her. "That's not true," Amira stammered, her voice shaking. "I didn't. Yes, you did, came another voice. Malcolm's. He stood in the doorway, coat still in hand. He must have been listening from the porch. His expression was calm but tired. You told me the same stories when we started dating. You said your sister was manipulative, that she ruined people's lives. I believed you. And when I found out the truth, I started seeing you for who you really were. Amira's lips parted, but no sound came out. Malcolm sighed and looked at me. I'm sorry, Zuri. You didn't deserve what was said about you. I nodded slightly, unable to speak through the lump in my throat. The tears that fell weren't from pain this time. They felt like freedom, like years of carrying someone else's lies had finally lifted off my shoulders. Mom reached for my hand. I knew the truth would find its way home, she whispered. Amira stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. So this is it. Everyone turns against me now. She looked at Malcolm, her eyes wild. You're really leaving me over her? Malcolm's voice was quiet. I'm leaving because you became everything you accused her of being. Amira's chest rose and fell fast. She looked at all of us, searching for sympathy, but found none. Her face crumpled, then hardened again. Without another word, she grabbed her purse and stormed out into the cold night. The door slammed, and for the first time in years, the house felt peaceful. I sat there, tears still wet on my cheeks, breathing in the silence, the sound of finally being free. 3 months later, sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new apartment. The place still smelled faintly of fresh paint and jasmine, my favorite scent. I stood by the counter, pouring 2 cups of coffee as the city below buzzed with life. It was a far cry from the cramped room I'd come back to last Christmas, carrying nothing but 2 suitcases and a broken heart. Now, everything felt lighter. Mom sat across from me, wrapped in a soft beige shawl. She looked proud, but also peaceful, a woman who'd spent years carrying her daughter's storms and was finally seeing calm skies again. You've really made this place your own, she said, smiling as she glanced around the apartment. I laughed softly. Guess I finally had a chance to start over. And this time, no one to tell me I can't. We sipped in silence for a moment. The hum of the city below was comforting. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. I know it wasn't easy, she said quietly. You could have fought back, tried to ruin her reputation after everything she did. But you didn't. I shrugged, a small smile tugging at my lips. I used to think revenge meant making the other person hurt the way they hurt you. But now, I think it's just living well. Moving on without needing them to notice. Mom's eyes glistened. That's real strength, Zuri. I looked around again, the sketches on the wall, the laptop open with client emails, the vase of lilies on the coffee table. My design career had taken off faster than I'd expected. Elias, my boss, had made me the lead on several major projects, and for once, I didn't doubt myself. People respected me for what I built, not for who I was related to. Mom stirred her coffee. Have you heard from your sister? I shook my head slowly. No, not since that night. Her expression softened. She'll come around one day. Guilt has a way of catching up. Maybe, I said. But I'm not waiting for her anymore. We both smiled at that. Outside, a light drizzle began to fall, the kind that makes the world smell clean again. I leaned against the window, watching droplets race down the glass. There was a time I thought I'd never escape her shadow, that Amira's lies, her jealousy, would define me forever. But standing here now, surrounded by the life I'd rebuilt, I realized I'd already won. Not because she lost, but because I'd stopped fighting battles that weren't mine anymore. Mom rose to leave, giving me one last warm hug. I'm proud of you, baby. As the door closed behind her, I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't payback, it's peace. And for the first time in years, I believed it completely. The house glowed with golden light, laughter spilling from every corner as soft music played in the background. The scent of roasted turkey, cinnamon candles, and pine filled the air. For the first time in years, Christmas felt warm again, not just because of the decorations or the gifts, but because peace finally lived here. Zuri stood in her living room, smiling as her guests chatted and clinked glasses. The walls she once painted alone were now alive with joy and love. Children ran around the tree. Rosa laughed with an old friend near the fireplace, and the hum of happiness made the place feel complete. It was her home, her space, her moment. She'd hosted this Christmas to mark a new beginning, a full year since the storm that nearly broke her. And as she looked around, she realized how far she had come. No trace of bitterness, no ghost of pain, just gratitude. The doorbell rang. She excused herself and walked to the door, wiping her hands on her apron. A delivery man stood outside, holding a small white envelope sealed with gold trim. "For Miss Zuri Daniels," he said. She thanked him, took the envelope, and closed the door gently. It wasn't from a company or a friend. Her name was written in handwriting she instantly recognized. Amira. Her breath caught for a moment. For a year, her sister had stayed silent. No calls, no visits, not even a text. Part of Zuri had stopped expecting anything. But here it was, a letter with Amira's looping handwriting, carrying the weight of everything left unsaid. She walked to the fireplace, the crackling sound filling the silence, and slowly opened it. Inside, one short letter. Zuri, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know I finally see what I refused to see for years. You were never the failure. I was. My pride, my jealousy, my lies, they destroyed everything I had, and I'm sorry for every word that made you doubt yourself. I hope this Christmas brings you the peace I couldn't give. Amira. Zuri's eyes welled up, but not from sadness, from understanding. She stood there quietly, reading the letter once more. Then she folded it neatly, walked to the mantel, and placed it beneath a small glass ornament shaped like a heart. She whispered, "Merry Christmas, Amira." The firelight flickered across her face, soft and warm. Behind her, laughter erupted as her guests called her back to join them. Zuri turned, smiling, and walked toward them, her mother waving her over with open arms, her friends cheering for a toast. As she raised her glass, she looked around the home she built, surrounded by love, and thought, this is the Christmas I was meant to have. No bitterness. No revenge. Just peace, pure, earned, and hers at last. Do you think Zuri made the right choice by finding peace instead of revenge? Or should she have confronted Amira face to face? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. And if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another one.